All right, hello everybody, and let's get right into this lesson because I have so much to talk about this lesson. And you know me, I try to make them short. Definitely, this is going to go on for an hour at least. So, as I put out a lesson, you may be watching this way into the future, and you don't realize that there was a lesson put out a few minutes ago where I suggested that you watch the preview or the other lesson that inspired this lesson. What I mean is, lately I've been watching. I always watch other content creators, as I'm sure most guitar content creators will do, and uh, I stumbled upon a lesson that I thought this is another great one. I'd like to turn around and make an inspired lesson by, or put some of the concepts of that lesson into graph paper ideas, visual graph paper ideas, because I think a lot of great, really great stuff was expressed, but perhaps not in a way that a beginner could approach it, or and no visualizations on the improv part, but great ideas about improv. There's a chord progression coming up at the end that YouTuber created, and that's really where he knocked his lesson out of the park. And luckily for you guys, I got off my lazy butt and grabbed my looper, an old looper out of the closet. I haven't used it in years. Got it hooked up, and I've got a chord progression ready to play in a little bit as we when we get to that part. So we'll have a great chord progression to check out our scale visualizations over. There's a modulation involved with this teaching today, and it's not hard at all once you can conceptualize it. So now the rest of this that I talk about will be presuming that you have watched that lesson, and so you'll know what we're talking about when I relate to the concepts expressed in Noel Johnston's video. I should mention him. The link will be in the description below, as it was in the preview, little 2-minute preview video I made a few minutes ago. Um, so Noel Johnston, Why Chromedians Sound So Good, I think is the title. And I'm sure if you just search Noel Johnston Chromatic Mediants, you'll get right to this lesson. But the link will be in the description below. So without any further ado, let's kind of get into what he was talking about. Now, there's so much to say, and there's so many little ways I want to interpolate what he said and put it into my own words. So that being said, um, uh, it's kind of hard for me to think about where to start. But his main point was the relationship between the C major scale and the A flat major scale, in the way that you can theorize it using chromatic mediants as the terminology. Um, they're important. You're going to need tricks like this to sound relevant today if you're making music and you want to sound up to date. And so this is a skill you're going to need. And you need tricks today. I'm going to go over that in a second. And so he is showing how there's this interesting geometry, but his geometry was a little different. He used this circle that we have printed out here, and I'm not going to be able to make all the little connected lines like he did in his video, but this is like a representation, so we can sort of relate to what he was talking about um, as he was talking about it. But before we get into the relationship of his video, really showing a chromatic mediant relationship between C major and A flat major, as I said, I'd like to talk with you about a bunch of there's what he expressed is, I don't believe, the only way that you'll that the chromatic mediants exist. Now, a couple other things. I want to play you some bits and pieces of music so you can get to hear what chromatic medians sound like in how they're used in a one older song and a couple of modern contexts. So you can get this sound in your ears. That's important for anything. Is to be able to hear and have audible examples. Um, well, let's start there. I think any thoughts that have escaped me will come to me as I'm talking. So to start with, we start with one progression where this one is a little bit of a mystery to me. And I did just remember one idea that I had where chromatic mediants really there were really you can really just be absolute a, a lot more simple by just saying borrowed chords really when it comes down to it. These chromatic mediants, it's a great way to make something sound so much more advanced and scare away half the people that are trying to learn. So you're got the market open to yourself to make good music without everybody trying to copy you and know what you're doing. Um, Now that being said, uh, that it's an accurate way to explain simple borrowed chords that will come from another key, because if a chord is not in the key you're in, you're a diatonic series of chords, it's coming from another key. And but why the question becomes, why do these other chords that are not in the key, what makes them sound good? I mean, shouldn't and what makes some chords just sound wrong? And really, all good or bad, that's really all about context. Almost any chord could be made to sound totally wrong or kind of cool, depending on the context. If you really are thinking about um, making your music. So that being said, still some chords kind of just naturally sound cool with other chords, but you're like, that's not in the scale. So why is that happening? Well, then you can explain it because medians, median kind of coming from medium, and the every other chord in a scale has something to do with being called a median. There's a submedian, and we don't have to get into all that theory. I'm not. I'll be honest with you. I don't really need in my songwriting and creating. I create my own music on um, the best I can on my own DAW digital audio workstation. We use Studio One here, um, and I don't need to definitely know all that. When the time comes, if I need to, I can study up on that more. But I can get around chord progressions myself pretty easily. And so it's a way to theorize. It's a way to put it into technical terms that the a chord can change by one note. In other words, and he Noel describes this in this video too. That basically it's the art of taking a chord, basically any chord in your scale, and changing it from major to minor, taking the middle note, the median, the third, and moving it chromatically to the major third, or taking a major third and moving it chromatically to the minor third. So there you get kind of chromatic medians in a loose sense. So um, that's why you would have this big theory jargon, because if you just play all the chords in a major scale, they sound good together, but they get kind of boring. And then you can spice it up with these other chords, and you might want to know, like, well, if music theory is, if all there was diatonic theory, then these chords would blow diatonic theory out of the water, because you're like, hey, you don't need diatonic theory. There's something wrong with it. There's these other chords that sound good. Well, no, you can. Chromatic medians is explaining these chords from the reference point of a diatonic understanding. So that being said, you can just think about all these big theory terms a lot more loose and just realize that I'm only talking about borrowed chords. So let me give you some examples now. First one will be one that is from a modern song, and I believe that this is a chromatic median. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know it follows one of the rules where one note is related to a note that precedes it, and it's working toward. We're going down a whole step from the 6 to the 5, but we play a chord based on the note in the middle there, a chromatic note, and it's in the middle of those chords, so I'd call that a chromatic median all day long. Is it truly based on the definition? I don't know for sure, but let's hear it because it sounds really cool and sounds like the concept. Where did this? I need to give some credit for this chord progression because I just heard it in a song. It's probably, I would imagine, this is pretty common and in a lot more songs than the one I picked up, but I have to give credit, and I really want to give credit to a high school person I went to high school with. Her name is Megan Taylor, and she's the lead singer for a band called Gift Shop, and they play somewhere primarily in New York City. I think the club is called the Astoria. Not totally sure. And I'm sure you could find them out. They're on YouTube. Check them out. I would call their genre, I would think it's very punk inspired to my for my what I heard, and that was good music. And I just wanted to say, like, this is where I definitely have gotten this chord progression from. So let's hear it. But before I do that, I do have work that comes through on my phone, and it makes that sound when there's work. So we're just going to hear if there is, and because I definitely need to work tomorrow, so I got to spoil my lesson here with some total extracurricular nonsense here. And we are okay, good to go. Waste of time notification, as cell phones do. Okay, so Megan and Gift Shop, here is your chord progression on my lesson today. There's so here how that chord progression really beautifully cycled around. That was the 1 of the E major scale. This is the 6, D flat, the chromatic median chord. Well, it's just a half step up from the 5. And it's part of the reason I think that chord is afforded its good sound there is because there's so much tension from the 5, around the 5. You can just because you're going to the 5, you're just going to that strong resolution to the 1. So it just works to be a lead in from. It's got 1 note. It's still got the minor third from the 6, from the D flat D6. And there you go. That's the you're moving in a third there, a major third. Common defined chromatic mediants based on the movement of chords from a third. So you're so there is no major chord a major third apart in a diatonic scale, but it works because it's called a chromatic mediant. So that being said, let's hear some more. Here's a common. Well, let's go back in time a little bit. Let me show you this. Because why you would want to, the reasoning to show you this would be kind of why you want to put these in your progression and learn them. I think if you're watching this lesson, you want to learn them anyway. So let's get through this. I don't know if I'm playing that totally right, but you got this E minor. I think it goes to G, but anyways, you got, C, and there's going to be, the third of C is E minor. So that's going to be a common old school progression. You got Neil Young using that. How about this one? If you got that already, 20 gold stars, but I'll sing it. You house proud town, my house, ha ha, charade you are. Pink Floyd Animals album, totally awesome. One of my all-time favorites, if not one of my top albums. That's the one I rescue from a fire, take with me on a desert island or something. But anyways, that and yes, Relayer probably. But that being said, those chord progressions though, all use standard diatonic chords, and honestly, they've been done to death. And if you do, make something pretty cool in diatonic, it's either going to sound going to be hard to escape, something that somebody's already done, and it probably won't have any kind of modern flair to it. So how do you get that modern flair? Well, how about this sound? Something like that. I screwed it all up, as I would on a live lesson, but, well, I'm recording it, but we're not going to edit that out. Creep by Radiohead. Just that first chord change. A new interest there, because that's supposed to be the three of, if you have just suggested G major, probably going to play G major diatonic, but that would be the third of that would be this B note, which should be minor, but they play major, because that is an example of a chromatic median. Then they play the 4, which should be major as minor, but that's a common one to switch over to minor. Oh, I think it goes. Oh, it doesn't go back to minor. I don't know. It did something. I just learned it a second ago. And okay, here's another version. Instead of going C to E minor, there's C to E major. Not E major is a borrowed chord, but you could also consider that a chromatic mediant. Because in this case we're going up a third. Okay, just the same way Creep goes up a third. But here's another one. Now this goes back to the 70s. And when I started fooling around with this lesson today where he's showing C to A flat, I thought, where have I heard that before? And then it was this. 20 points, 20 gold stars if you know this song. Here it goes. distracted by my headphones falling off. But I just wanted to get to that note. Did you call out Jacob's Ladder? Rush. As you know, we're big Rush fans on this channel, so yeah, Jacob's Ladder. Chromatic Mediants all day long. None of those chords. There's that C major to A flat major, and then you got the F and the G, which are shared by both of those scales, and then there's an E major in there, another chromatic mediant from the C, and yeah, it all works pretty good. And I think it all is also could be harmonic majors getting implied there, harmonic minor, sorry. But anyways, this lesson isn't about the theory of Jacob's Ladder, so let's move on. But we've heard now a new interesting set of ways to put chords together, and that should pique your interest into why chromatic mediants sound great, and they're cool, and could help to make your sound, your song, give it a modern flair. Okay, so he used this circle thing here. Now he made a couple points I want to dissect a little bit, and there was, based on what I know here and what I'm going to show you, I was able to follow along with his lesson almost to a T. I could understand when he was talking about how you are flipping the major scale over to become a Phrygian scale. We're going to go over exactly how I conceptualize that. But it does make sense. However, he did allude to the fact that he showed you how you can take the geometry of a chord. Basically, a chord is 1, 3, 5, and if you draw the lines here, like say from this root, you would draw from root to the 3 right here, and then to the 5, and then back to the root for 1, 3, 5 from the root. In this case, we'll call it C major. And if you reverse that, so you would draw then instead from the 3 and then making an angle over to the 5 and then back to the root, we got to reverse that. So we would go, instead of the coming to the 3, we would go to the 5 and then to the 4 and then back to the root. So that would be flipping that over. And I understand that, and that shown here would create from, you would diatonically, you would have root to the 3 there is E, and the 5 is G. The 5 of C is G, C, E, G. Oh, and by the way, what is going to really help this lesson, and you know, it'll work both ways. It'll help you learn these chord names, and but you should learn them, or it will help if you already know them and have them in the, in the back of your mind available. Like, for example, just being able to run through the scale by knowing your chord names, or the notes, the 3 notes of every triad, and how they relate. So for example, I'm going to go through the scale, but I'm going to go chord 1, chord 3, chord 5, chord 7, chord 2, chord 4. That's skipping every other chord until we've got 7 chords named. So for example, and so you can know the relationships between these chords that are skip 1 to the next one. Those are a third apart. So for example, C, E, G, the 3 of the scale, E, G, B, the 5 of the scale, G, B, D, the 7, B, D, F. You see, you just take the last 2 and start with those for the next chord. So we want B, D, F is the 7. So the 2 is going to be D, F, A. And then the 6, or the 2, 4, the 4 is going to be F, A, C. And the 6 is going to be A, C, E. And now we're back to the, skip the 7, go back to the 1, C, E, G. So you can see the relationship. There's like a one note relationship between these chords. And so that's what makes them pleasing in succession to each other, because you're just expanding and you're only changing one note per chord. So good voice leading, I think, is what they would call that. So that's going to help you for the rest of this lesson. So back to this, what he was saying, being able to flip everything, all the chords over. He did mention at the end of the lesson, if you listen to the very, very last end of the part of the lesson, that you could flip any chord from C to get to the A flat scale, A flat major. However, I found that you can only flip the 3 notes that are shared by both scales. And that would be the C, E, G. If you flip that around, we've got C, F, A flat. Now, before you say, Mark, there's no C, F, A flat chord, what kind of chord is that? Well, you have to remember chords work as suggestions or inversions. So an inverted chord might not have everything in order, but it's still going to suggest the same chord. For example, an F chord, maybe if you find, if you played F, C, A on your fretboard as a chord, or actually would, let's say, C, F, A, or C, A, F, you might think, well, what the heck chord is that? But it's F, A, C. An F chord is really going to be the inversion of an F chord, in one way, shape, or form. Loosely speaking here. It may need to be rearranged in a certain way, but it doesn't always have to be FAC 135. It can be 351. It can be 531. Or was it? No, 513. Sorry. Okay, so that being said, we have F A flat C. Now you might say, well, Mark, that's not FAC. Well, FAC is a major chord. What's a minor chord going to be then? We're going to take the third note, the A, and we're going to flat it. A flat. Oh, yeah, that's what we had. F, A flat, C. You can see that down here. If we reversed our C, E, G, it would be C, A flat, F. So there's our F, A flat, C. Reverse image, which is the minor chord of it's the 6 minor of the A flat chord. You might say, well, I mean, how do you know? I mean, F minor is in a couple of different keys, so that's true. But if you take all 3 of them, the only place that these 3 chords are going to fit that become minors, from major to minor, are in this A flat scale. So we'll continue here by suggesting the, let's say, G. So G would start from here, the 5. We would have 5, and what's it, G, B, D. So we have G to B. Oh, sorry. B is before we have this one. G, B. Just the same as, it's just like starting from a different direction, we got the same geometry. You go to here and there. So if we're starting here, we would go from here to, where is it? Here. The B. Oh, sorry, B is here. So G to B, and then to D, C, D. So G, B, D right here. 5, 7, 2. Well, instead of that, we should go, how would that flip? That would flip like, I believe it would become GBD, should become G, C, G, C, D, G, C, D. So we would have G, that to C, and, oh, sorry, like that minor chord, so sorry, that'd be D sharp. So there's 2, so we would have G going to the 2 and to the C, D, oh, so 5, 3, to the flat 3 there. And as you can see, it's a lot of thinking for what I can show you much more simple. But the geometry was kind of neat. But I got geometry here that's also neat. And the geometry that I like pertains to the fretboard. So there's no translating from a cool circle, which is cool. And don't get me wrong, I thought what he did was extremely fascinating. What you did know, but if you watch this, I don't know. I did suggest on his channel. I do, just so you guys know, when I do somebody's lesson, I let them know in their comment section that I'm doing this, so they have the opportunity to say, please don't, stay off my shit, get off, jerk. I don't know. I don't think anybody would be like that. But if they are, I would just take the lesson down. But anyways, G. So what do we got here? I'm gonna continue with it, even though it's a little cumbersome here. But it should be G. Should lead us to a G minor chord, just the same way F or B and oh yeah. So G. We're in the key of C. We had a G. We're going into C minor because we have a G, a C, G, C. We should have an E. So we have an E flat. Yeah, G, C, E, or C, E, G, sorry, would be G major. So we have, sorry, my bad, C major going into, wait a minute, so C major went into F. So we have a G major in, this should be going into the 6 of the 3. Sorry. The 5 of C becomes the 3 of If All Is Well by just moving one note, or 2 notes, sorry. But we move 2 notes in this by flipping the geometry. So he says. But as you can see, it's let me just try to draw some lines here so I'm not going crazy here. We'll get a pencil here. We'll get a nice thin line. And this is going to look a little sloppy, but so, you know what? Let's make red for let's make green for our initial line here. So we're going to go like this over from G. We got G. This is C. It's B, C, D. So we've got G, D, and C would be G, B, D. So we need to reverse that, and we'd also like to come up with, let's look at where what's C, Well, that doesn't make much sense because is there even a G in there? Yeah, we have a G. Oh, okay. So we have G going to C, going to C, D. So we would be here. Let me see if this makes any sense. Now my... Okay, there it is. Oh, man. We'd have C for some reason, going to G, going to... Yeah, I don't see how that geometry flips. I'm sorry. But let's say we decided to go here and here. What happens if we do this? What happens if we go here and here and here? That should be the reverse of what we just did, right? Well, not really, because G is over there, so that actually wouldn't be it. We would be, holy shit, folks. I don't know what this... Sorry. It was cool what he did, but the G, I can't see how... What do we got here? Where actually is the this chord? Let's undo that, and we'll... we got a C, G, so we got C to G, and that would be here, right? This is a D sharp, so there's C, D, D sharp, so that should be here, and back there. So yeah, I'm not seeing how that's a flip, but that is a similar change. So what I'm getting here at, folks, is a C major chord. If you flip that on this diagram, you get this little triad shape here, and I didn't even have to figure it out from these note names or from this diagram. I can just go, hey, I know that triad shape. That comes from this chord. However, also, and I wrote this in my comment on his lesson, here we have the back to the C major triad, root note here on the low string, and a triad shape here, the major triad shape. That little angle 4-3-2 string chord. If I take that shape that this became when we reversed this one back here, when we took our C, E, G, and well, it's hard to make straight lines with this, and we made it, let's make it a new color orange, and you've got, from here, then we could reverse this pretty easily. We'll go C, here, here, and here, and we've got the reverse, and there you got the notes for this chord. F minor, the 6th chord of the new key, but if I put my root up here, this shape also makes a C sharp major. I know that from learning jazz chords, these little root on the 6th string and then play a little triad shape on strings 4, 3, and 2. Here we have the what I would call the A minor triad shape. That's so hard to see my fingers, I'm sure, but there we go. So we have this. Now if we consider that's C sharp major, and we just came from C major, in a diatonic scale, you don't have two major chords a half step apart. However, you do in harmonic minor. So you could play presto. So that's what I meant when I said, hey, that implies harmonic minor, because recently found out in my harmonic minor endeavors that there's two cool half step apart major chords, and I recognize that instantly from the song YYZ from Rush, where the solo is based partly in harmonic minor. So over two half step apart major chords. All right, so that being said, let's kind of skip out of this flipped geometry. Now, in this discussion of flipped geometry, and he alludes to the fact that it's C major becomes C Phrygian, which is true. But I don't exactly conceptualize it like that, because Phrygian implies like it's the name of a scale shape that identifies all the right notes to swap from C major to get to this new chord. However, it sort of implies that we're going to be playing in Phrygian, maybe strictly, to sound Phrygian, you'd have to be pretty strict Phrygian. You'd have to, play, a C minor chord. That accentuating that note, because that note is the one, pretty much the note that accentuates that this is not natural minor. We are playing a minor. It's not Dorian minor. It's not Aeolian minor. This is Phrygian minor, and that would be the note. That would be the note. Okay, so he's doing that though because that Phrygian is the third of A flat major, which was what I referred to it as. A Jacob's ladder chord progression sound. Okay, so how can we see more or less what he was talking about here? I want to talk about his point about how every interval flips. Even this is, to me, not totally necessary for me to be able to improvise over this concept of chromatic mediants. In this case, being using a third below the original. And he had this interesting point to make about how intervals are, when you flip them over, there is a similarity. And I can show that to you right here better. He was flipping them geometrically on this pattern, and it was really cool. And remind me, don't let me forget, because I think if I go to this one point that just bugged me, like, oh yeah, you wanted to talk about this too, I may lose the point. I won't lose the point that I'm talking about here, but let me tangent for one quick second. He also showed a neat geometry where he took the geometry of the major scale, where he connected root to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to the regular 7 to the root. And he showed how if he clicked it over one whole notch, meaning, well, 2 notches, I guess, take this 2 and go click, click, and rotate this series of connections he made up to the root, it became completely a very symmetrical shape. The major scale is not looking so symmetrical from the viewpoint of the Ionian 1 on top. But if you took the 2 and made it on top, it does make it symmetrical. But to me, I mean, as neat as that was just Dorian. That just means that at the top you're considering the Dorian scale. Well, here we'll do D Dorian. And I keep hitting that note because that is the one note that identifies Dorian and outside of Aeolian and Phrygian minor, the two other minors that are available diatonically. So cool and relevant to today's lesson because we want to use this Dorian shape as a means to improvise over this chord progression that he came up with. And we're going to get to that. So let's get to that as fast as we can because that's the meat and awesome potatoes of this lesson. But he made that point, and I just thought, well, that's neat, but it's a little off topic here, and it works because, well, it looks symmetrical on a circular diagram. Cool, but it's just Dorian to me. So that being said, he made this point of the back and forth nature of intervals. So, for example, here, oops, yeah, let's go back to the start here, back to the front. We will do when I say, back to the front. Oh, we went into Metallica there for some crazy reason. So straight up and down, as you can see, there's no inverting this because, well, there's no other side to this. So that stands to reason that is the flat fifth is on the other side. The tritone on the total other side of is 1 is major in heaven, while the tritone is hell. And that's why it was called the devil's interval. Well, I don't know about all that, but they say it was called the devil's interval. But there was a reason that was a little more benign as to why classical composers stayed away from this. I think it was a little made up and fantasized about in recent years. But however, the tritone is a row on the fretboard, and you can see it right here in 2 places. And he showed this in his lesson too, how starting with this interval, if you go this way, it's a tritone. If I go this way, it's a tritone. No matter which way I go across the root, it's just a tritone. Where other ways of crossing the root has a counterpart that is equal in movement in intervallic space, or equal in intervals when you cross the root. So, like for example, if I go from the 7 to the 2, or if I consider moving from the flat 7 to the 2, like you take its opposite. So the opposite of this 3 is this sharp 5. The opposite of this 4 is this 5. The opposite of this flat third is the 6th. And that is what he's talking about, is how everything has the distance, the intervallic distance, the spaces of notes between the flat 3 and the root is the exact same as the 6 to the root. And you can see, like, if you played that note to that note, it's the same. So it's just this. there's a sound to it that you've heard before because it's going to make music when you work these geometries out. Here's another one. Two whole steps, above and below. One is a 2, one is a flat 7. But there's a relationship between a 2 and a flat 7, and that would be it. What's the relationship between a 5th and a 4th? Like he said, when you move up a string, it's a 4th. When I do the same interval spacing down, it's a 5th. From D to A, you might know that going up is a power chord. If I go down, the A is above the D, that's a 5th. If I go up above it, I get to DG. Another, if I consider D down to G, that would be a 4th. But if I could take the G and I go down to D, then it's a 5th. So anyways, you can see this kind of working out here with this weird set of lines that I drew. The green represents the root, and this is the this is the neck cluster. There's no other pattern of notes on your guitar, believe it or not. This main cluster interlocks and links all over your fretboard. Follow the octave spacing of the root, adjust for the shift between the G and the B string, and this will be all over your fretboard. I don't notice it when I play because there's easier navigation methods to use, but this is underlying all those everywhere you go on the fretboard. This is the only place you can be. And this is the pattern, this crossing the root this way. You cross the root in this direction, you have a tritone, and you can see that they're an octave apart, so it's the same note either way. If I cross it this way, I have a 4th and a 5th. If I cross it this way, I have a, well, let's look up here, I have a flat 2 and a 7 as the same half step up, half step below. The 2 and the flat 7, whole step up, whole step down. The flat 3rd, that's a minor in this direction, a flat 3rd in this direction. In this direction, it's a 6th. If I move in this direction, it's a major 3rd. If I move in this direction, it's a sharp 5th. There's a relationship between a sharp 5th and a 3rd, considering a root. And that just covers, I think we covered every interval there. Where do these intervals come from? Let's look at the top row here. We have, root, flat 2nd, 2, flat 3rd, 3rd, 4th, flat 5th, 5th, sharp 5th. You want to get used to this. We've talked about it in a million lessons, so I'm not going to spend any time other than, there's the 3/5 because the 5 is such a gravity-based interval that pulls you back to the root. The intervals around it are considered related to it. So you have your 5 on this side. It's the only interval that does that. Where on one side you have a flatted version of it, and on the other side you have a sharpened version of it. Now you can see here that there's no flat 6. 6 is on its own, but in certain contexts, if you were using this interval and going to this interval, you would call that the flat 6 because you already have, if you had a 5 and then this interval, then the 7, you would call that a flat 6 to avoid having 2 5s. It just is cleaner to conceptualize scale numbering in that regard. So that explains the overlap. Sometimes you see the enharmonic overlaps, like sometimes this 4 would be called a sharp 4 instead of a flat 5, and that explains that, which Noel also went over, and I appreciate that as part of his great lesson. So, but this is what I see, and definitely what I know. If I need to think about Like earlier, I told you, like, hey, they share three notes, and he mentioned that at the end of his lesson, which was cool. Because before I was done watching, I was thinking to myself, oh, I wonder if he knows, that this shares three notes. When I think about different keys and how many notes they share, I can know just like that. I don't know exactly what notes they are until I think about it deeper and take a little longer with it. So it's not 100% perfect method. However, there's a neat little code you can know, and that's right down here at the bottom. And it's right down here, and it also falls into this. It's where this kind of line shaping comes from. I'll show you that in a second, but memorize for yourself root two. Take Now, normally you think it'd be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but there's a weird kind of reversal, geometric reversal here. So root 2, move a half step away, and a key shares two notes, and that makes sense. If I play the key of C, um, and I go a half step up, oops, they don't sound related at all, and that's because they only share a sound you can sort of conceptualize, because everything sounds like it just moved up a half step or moved down a half step. So it's not as common of a chord structure. It's going to sound pretty obvious in most cases that that's where you changed. If you needed like a really jarring chord change for a movie scene or something, you might consider that if you need. But many people would probably change to a tritone, so to definitely didn't sound related, and that's because they only shared two notes, because I took my exact pattern and I moved it in the direction of a tritone. And you can see in the middle, that's what I did. That's the flat five. It's shares two. But anyways, back to what I was saying: 2, 5, 4, 3, 6. So we just if you take a close look, the 3, 4, 5 is backwards. So 2, 5, 4, 3, 6, 2, 6, like a Mazda 626. That's an old car from the 90s that I remember because I'm old. And that was like a new car to me. I remember cars a lot older than that. But anyways, I'm still not that old. So back to 3, 4, 5. We're basically in geometric opposites, getting back to the root. So 3, 4, 5, 2. And we're at the octave. Now, how that works is if someone says we're going from C major to A flat, I go, okay, A flat, that's down a third. So here I am at my root. Whoa, where'd my cursor go? Oh, you know what? We got to go back here, and there's my big plus sign again. Okay, so here we are at the root. And sorry for not having a cursor for the last few minutes, folks. It might have been a little hard to follow where exactly my mind was while we were on this board. But anyways, root, I'd go down from the C major. We went down. So there's the 2, 5, 4, 3. There's where we are to get to A major, or A flat major, A flat, A, B flat, B, C. So that I automatically knew when he said we're going to Phrygian, I thought, okay, well, Phrygian is the third of a major scale. What major scale is it? It's 3 down from C. Phrygian is A flat, C. So there's, oh, okay, A major or A flat major. And that would, so I knew that we were sharing three notes just like that. Now, which three is it? It took me a little bit of time to think about it, but as he mentioned in the video, it's very easy. It's the 1, 4, and 5, which I thought was really cool. That's another geometric anomaly there, because the 1, 4, 5 is such a popular and common progression, and it's all three major chords in the scale, the 2, 3, and 6, are the three minor chords. I like to think of it as 6, 2, 3, because 6 being the Aeolian, the most common middle of the road natural minor scale, then the 2, the Dorian, and the 3, the Phrygian. Kind of like the way um, 1 would be on top here. Let's go to C major, play F major, and G major. Well, if we turn that to minor, it'd be 6, 2, G minor 3, and back to the 6. Pretty fascinating, pretty interesting geometry there. So that being said, you can kind of start to see where this chromatic median started from without kind of the very cool but not absolutely necessary thought process that everything is flipped. But that is cool to think about, that music is related to good geometry. That is I think a good thought to ponder, and brought to you by Noel's lesson. So that's a strong point I could associate with his teaching there. So this kind of NX U shape is kind of pointed to right here. If you take this, here we took this row of intervals and we arranged it in our fretboard block. Now we took this chord relationship, or sorry, key relationship row, and we arranged it into this block. And this is where this neat geometry comes from. Now you can see a root 2 root for the 2 notes shared by the tritone, both the 4th and the 5th. You can see the relationships here too, by the way. You can see that up above and below, that both keys share 6 notes. That is the relationship between the 4th and the 5th. And you would see that in this by drawing these lines everywhere across the circle as he did. But I like to see it here on the fretboard. So we've got the 3 and the 3. They both share 3 notes. If they're in with the common relationship, or the related intervallic relationship of a major third and a sharp 5th, or you could call it the augmented 5th. So pretty cool there. And the reason I made this shape up, this little palindrome shape, because palindromes, geometry, if you flip this upside down, it's the same shape, which I thought was fascinating. So flip your computer screens up. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Well, if you're watching on a phone, you might be able to. But anyways, the reason it is because when I needed to memorize the layout, I was like, well, wait, where was the 3rd? Where was the 4th? Were they this way? Were they that way? I just remembered if you jump off your root and start with a 2, goes 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the explanation of this little U shape here. On the other side, it goes 2, 3, 4, 5. This 2, 3, 4, 5 is in a U shape this way. The opposite of this. So it's just neat how everything is mirror image in music. There's all this flip-flop geometry. Very cool and totally related to what Noel was talking about, but right here on your fretboard. That's why I did this, because when I saw his lesson, I'm like, oh my god, I can totally translate that to my Marco fretboard speak. And I think that it's just cool like that. So let's move on, because I'm sure I've been rambling for more than 45 minutes now. We've got a bunch of sheets to go here, so we got to get off this. So now it's time to jam. We've got an idea about why they sound cool, where they came from, all this flip-flop geometry. Let's move on here. So Noel came up with these cool chords in a progression to bring out the flavors of these 2 keys that mirror image each other. So once again, he went from C major to C Phrygian, and we discussed it. Phrygian is really just a way of conceptualizing A flat major. So C major to A flat major. Because you can see here, the chords he chose didn't even when it goes to A flat major, we're not even um, putting in the playing of Phrygian. We're playing with Lydian and Aeolian. So let's discuss some things. So start at the bottom. Our chord here, these are the chords at the top. Okay, this is a chord, this is a chord, this is the other chord, and this is the 4 chords in his progression. He alternates, which I thought was cool. And when I play it, I did 8 beats per each chord, just to give us a little time to flavor up the intervals, give us that interval, give us that our improvising the flavor of what we're doing before we make a transition. Now, if you notice, he did it cool in the fact that he chose chords from in alternating patterns. So the first chord is from C major, the second chord, and they kind of move down progressively, which is cool. So we move down the fretboard sonically, and we're in the A flat major key. The next chord is in the C major, back to C major, and then back to the A major, and on and on. So that means we'll play a scale pattern that I'm going to show you. It's so easy, it's unthinkable. And this is where also why I made this lesson, because he showed this cool thing, and you could probably pick it up sonically, but he didn't really show you any tools to get this fretboard playing, like how to make this easy, how to make the improvising easy. And that's where the kicker of my lesson here, which I got to get to if I'll just get to the point here. So, but I do feel like I got to explain this for people, or else they're left with too many questions. So here we have C major for this chord. The key is C major. Now, I've listed down here, and he listed this too in his. He suggested that this is the Dorian, and this is correct. This chord suggests the Dorian. In C major, if we play a 2 chord or a chord off the second note of the C scale, C, D, here we've got a D minor 11. The second chord of the C major scale is minor, and it's D. So we have a D minor 11, and his kicker here is adding these extensions, which made this a really beautiful progression and really brought out these cool flavors to each chord, which was really where I just nailed it for me, where I said, oh, I got to make this a lesson, because this is excellent. And I mean beyond excellent, because you can just go, okay, D minor, then, D flat major 7, or just D flat major. So, freaking boring, right? Just made chords with these major 7, sharp 11. Now we're talking, we've got cool sonic spices going on in here with these fourths, which are 11s, by the way. You should always think of the second interval. If you add a 2 into your chord, it's going to be usually referred to as a 9, flat 9 or regular 9. If you add in a 4, it's usually going to be considered an 11 if there is a third still in the chord. If you remove the third, then you've suspended the chord, and you're back to just considering that a suspended 4 or a suspended 2. But if you keep the major minor flavor of the third in there, then a fourth is usually referred to as an 11, and a 2 will be a 9. A 6 is the 13, but 13s are usually jazz speak, so that's probably why they weren't suggested here, although this one has a 13 in it too, so I guess I can't say that because there's a 6 right there in the second chord. So excuse me here, we've got D minor, so that's Dorian based on the 2 chord, and it's at the 5th fret. So here I've colored the intervals. I've made it standard for every chord, the 1 being the green, and this will come up in a little bit, but not totally important to know this, but sort of important to know this. The 1 being green, the ultimate flavor or the extension being yellow, the 7th of the chord when present. Think what this one has a 7, this one has a 7, and my ugly ass is blocking this 3rd chord, so I'm going to go off screen here for a second, and that's going to require me to go here and go here, and how did I do that? Video capture device, lock it up. No, don't lock it, shut it down. There I go. All right, cool. So I'm a ghost. I'm invisible. So the flat 7 here, flat 7 here, flat 7 here, a darker interval, going to be a little troublesome. And by the way, this should be labeled as flat 7. Let's see if I can do that and see if that works. Yeah, cool. I put it in parentheses there because he adds this in when he plays this chord. At first he goes through just the basic DM11, but then I hear him play this note in there, and I think he looped it around a second time and added it in, so it sort of, it's there if you want it. And let's hear it. So that's going to be this chord based on the 5th. Sorry, I'm not here to show you, but it's hard to see this little screen. It's hard to see my guitar anyways. But if you're playing along, you can hear it. So moving on to the next chord, a little bit funky to play, but I'm sure you watched his lesson too. This is where I got the fingerings because I could hear him go. Then he went, and you can just hear how cool that sounds. And you don't totally have to play that. I thought something went out there, but maybe not. Okay, so yeah, you kind of want to get these ideas here. Just to go over, when we go to the A major, we're playing a D flat. Now D flat is the 4 of A flat major. If you can see, the root is here on the 6th string. Straight above it, where we said the 4th was earlier, is that D flat, and that would be a major chord. And so we've got a D flat major, 7-11. Those funky cool extensions don't matter, but they actually really, that sharp 11 actually really does, that's the one note that's going to make a Lydian sound Lydian versus, Lydian is a major scale. What's going to separate it from an Ionian major scale? One note, and it's going to be that sharp 4, and we have that right in the chord. So we're really not only playing the 4th chord of the scale, but we've included the special note that really pulls the mode out. And that's what makes the improvising sound so cool, is actually the background chord, which is a great thing to know about improvising. A lot of times you learn these scales and you sit there playing your guitar with scales and there's no context. So you learn to noodle. It doesn't sound extremely great. It's not totally apparent to be able to pull modal sounds just by playing scales. And I'm so sick of seeing teachers that just teach the technical term of modes by teaching scales and not saying anything about the chords. That's so misleading to students. It's not even funny. I digress. So as our second chord, moving on to the 3rd chord, back to C major here. We have the Aeolian 6 is what we're going for. So we should be playing a 6 chord. Well, what's the 6th chord of C majors? An A minor. Okay, so here he has A minor 11. and this is how you finger it. Now, he plays it with this green root on the 5th fret, and you can finger it that way. It's not too hard. But I'm lazy. I just do the open A, like I said in this line here. It said, or the open A. Same thing. I think there is maybe a little better sound by fingering the fretting, I should say, the A on the 6th string. Okay, let's move on to this F minor 11. It says Aeolian. How are we getting Aeolian? Well, let's move down from this A flat note, the top of a pentatonic scale, or starting with A flat, move down 1, 2, 3, F. And if so, the 6th chord should be minor, so we're playing an F minor with some cool extra notes, and we're going to play the 11. So that's right here. Here's our root. The 11 or 4, but it's an 11 because we've got a root. Not because we've got the root, but I'm just going up our intervals listed here. We have the flat 3rd, and that is why. Here's major. You can hear the happier sound there. All right, and we have a 7 in there. It's a little bit of a stretch to play this chord, and naturally the 1 is there, but I don't think it rings well with the last chord, so I try not to play it, especially if I finger pick. But if I thumb the 6th string and play 4, 3, 2 with my 3 main fingers there, not my pinky, I miss the 4th, which is an integral part of the chord, so I might just try to strum it. Cool. So that will have you changing scales. And, he runs up and down the scale, showing you how cool it can sound and how it does sound right. But it doesn't show you the scales. And I think that was a little bit of a disappointment. Not intentional on his part, but I'm sure he's trying to not keep his lesson rambling for an hour and a half like this lesson is. However, here we go. These are the 2 scales. This is what I knew, that there would be scales that were close to each other, and that's what you'd really want to use to improvise over. So the very first thing we got to go over is just the basics of the scale. What are they? And if you notice, this one is first of all, my concept is to go with what's easy. And what's easier in major scale world than using the pentatonic scale, which is what both of these are based on, pentatonic framework. It's the same scale, this starting from the A note here, 5th string, 6th string, A note, 5th fret, 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 4. Enter in those, you're missing 2 notes to get to a major scale, so we'll enter them in now. Now, granted, the lowest note is the 6th of the scale, so that's why this is called the Aeolian scale. However, if you consider this note, where the plus sign is in this is always the root note of a scale. And so here we have our root note on the key of C. are on the note C. So, you know, just consider these as accessories. That's our main. And you have a C major scale, which is what we needed for C major. We need an A flat major scale that is in the vicinity of the C major. Well, it just so happens that A major puts this Dorian shaped scale one semitone or half step up from the C major scale. So if I take this, and as you can see here, I've listed it as fret 6. I go to my 6th fret now. When the other chord comes, this is where I'm going to move to. Here's them both played together, so you can hear how there is a coolness to how they sound together. The same way the chords kind of sound cool together. So here's C major. We're in A flat major. Switching. A little noodly, so there was not the most perfect transition between each, but if you just play one, we're going to go up one and down the other. Kind of sounding cooler together. So, okay, so depending on how you play it, they sound cool together. And here's a kicker about playing both of these scales. Remember we said that 3 notes are shared. So the important thing to know is what are these 3 notes and where are they shared? And these 2 scales should have these 3 notes, and here they are. So I still have the same pattern listed here, this Aeolian shape with the Dorian shape a half step up. And this is how they'll look together when you mash them together on the fretboard. Here they're just separated so you can see the whole thing. A couple other points here. In the orange, the orange notes are yellow notes. I just didn't want to make everything yellow to confuse everybody. But these are also, I wanted to show the redundancy here. These are also the yellow notes. This is also, as you can see here, F, G, and C are 1, 4, and 5 of major becomes our 6. And so that's 6. That's going to be 2. That's going to be 3. That's C, B, and so it would be G. Oh, okay. So it's not perfect to 1, 4, 5 major to 2, 3, 6 minor. It's not that perfect, however, but it doesn't really need to know that anyways. I just thought it would be neat if it all lined up. But just know that it's 1, 4, 5 in the C major, the original key. You've just got G, C, and F. But you don't even have to know the note names or anything. You just have to know where they sit on the scale and how they interlink between both scales. So what you can see here when you separate them is that these yellow keys and these this is where you want to think about when these are the link notes, okay? But when I'm noodling around in the C major, to get the change just right, there's a little secret I use, and that is this kind of these directional arrows. I'm going to consider that this 0, I'm not going to use that when the chord changes into the new. I want to be able to slide from a note a half step into the new scale, and these yellow notes here are going to provide that. I'm thinking this on these two yellow notes. So while I might play the whole scale and I might actually attempt to incorporate all the notes, especially if I can conceptualize the actual chord tones of the moment, but that's a little bit more difficult. But just as a side tangent, I did list those here. He uses the that chord progression is the 2 and the 6 and the 4 and the 6. So let's take a look at that. Here we have the 2 and the 6. So first we're going to play a minor chord from this root. Then when we come back to it, we're going to be playing a minor chord from that root. And then a major chord from this root and a minor chord from that root. If you know your caged shapes, which we'll go over in a little bit, that will help you there. But that's getting way, way, way deep into this. You can solo over this, being a little bit more noodly, but way easier just conceptualizing this. So last thing I'll say before we move on from this page, when I'm in this scale shape, these two notes here have this. I understand that these are my transition notes that shared in both scales, so they're safe through the transition, but after the chord transitions, I'm going to move this way to get to this purple scale. So, and let's just call this the gray scale and the purple scale from here on out, but we know gray is C major, purple is A flat major. So if I was here, which is what I was doing earlier, now the other chord is about to change, so I'm going to take one of these notes and go. Now I'm thinking, okay, now I'm playing in this purple scale, and my thought pattern changed those notes to this and this. I'm going to slide this one down to get to this gray note, or this one down to get to this gray note. There's a 0 here because this note is disappearing and becoming this note, and there's no note that way. So don't use this one as a transition note. In this scale, don't use this one as a transition note. Just use these two, and you can hear that, how my transition to the new scale kind of sounded smooth there. I'm noodling in the C major, but I'm not thinking of staying on those notes. I'm here, so I'm going to go. Oops, I don't want to be on that note. I'm going to go. I tried a little walk there, started at a purple note, went down to a yellow note, and we're walking down in the direction of the new note that's not in any scale, but it's going to sound great when the next chord hits. So it doesn't sound good when you are just, when your ear is thinking, sounds like a wrong note. But it'll sound good when the chords are playing though, because you've just went from a wrong note that just became a right note when you hit it. So it's going to make it sound cool. So moving on from here, that's all we can spend on this. You've got the your idea here. The stars represent overlap notes, but I tried to keep it simple. Basically, in this, I'm showing you this scale here. Now let's put it on the fretboard. So it would be here with the gray note starting on the 5th fret of the fretboard, and our purple starting from the 6th fret, and our F, G, C basic transition group here in yellow. So these notes are found in both scales, so they became yellow notes is what I'm trying to exemplify. So gray and yellow will work for C major. Purple and yellow will work for A major. And yellow will help to transition between both. So without any further ado, let's hear it. So I've got these chords in a loop, 8 beats, give or take. And let's hear how I do. We're going to start with the first chord is going to be, second chord is going to be, third chord, fourth chord. Here we go. Screwed up a little bit there. Put in my mind. C major, this is A flat major, purple scale, going to gray, all right, we're going to end it. So, as you can hear, I'm way up here because I know another pair of scales that I was using to put some extra creativity in there, and I'm going to show you those right now. Because you don't want just one under your belt, you get 2 under your belt, and well, you're going to sound like a seasoned pro. So, just before I show you that though, this is what you could know. What I was doing there, all I did was noodle around each scale, and they sounded cool because I was making the transitions good, and that's almost all you need to do. However, like during the one chord, you could know that your your that's going to sound good because I went flat third to 5 to a step to 7. Now I didn't call it a 6 because just consider the gray notes your stepping notes. Step to 4. See, I didn't want to end on that step. So I went step, flat third, 2, flat third, 5 to land on a stronger note. The strongest notes you can land on are going to be the red or green notes. And right there I'd be transitioning to my I was just conceptualizing everything in this one box to the 2 here. So I'd be going 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's one of the transition notes. So, but when I get to the 3rd chord here, it's going to turn into a stepping stone. So I may not want to transition on that note through there. I might want to transition on. Oh, it's actually not going to become the 2. I'm sorry. On the 3rd. So we would be going from a 1. I'm sorry, from a 7. 4, 7 to a flat 3rd. Now I'm going to the 4 chord. I'm on the yellow 4 of the 3, and it would become the 4 of the flat 7 of the 4 chord. Oh, I screwed that up. Anyways, you can see how that gets complex really fast. So here's something a much simpler way to conceptualize all this, and a way to kind of be able to noodle all around your fretboard if you know this little secret. You want to consider this yellow group of shared notes. Let's call these the shared notes, right? And how they relate to the fretboard. If you can find these pairs, and now what I mean by pairs is you see F, G, C, F, G, C. See how they run? No, sorry. They're on string pairs, E and A, D and G, and B and E. Our next chord group is going to use the other string pairs, A, D, and G and B, but we'll get to that in a second. This is utilizing what we just learned. And so what you see here is enough of a pool of notes to put some great soloing, great improvising into each of those chord changes, or key changes, sorry, chord changes, whatever. If you can conceptualize this yellow to gray, that turns yellow to a purple, you can do that anywhere it says FGC. So I could be here in my scale and I could know what to do. I could be up here in my fretboard and know what to do because it's the exact same pool of notes. So for example, if I was up here, or let's say right here actually, all right, well, yeah, let's go up here. Here would would be my gray pool. I'm on yellow, transitioning to the purple. I used a yellow note to make the transition between both. And so like how it works is you stay on these yellow notes and just visualize while you're in, one of these scales, you visualize those notes, and as you're approaching the chord change, anchor yourself on those 3 yellow tones and visualize the new scale and break into that forget the old one and just break into the new pattern from the pool of great matching notes, and it sounds really cool. It sounds like you know what you're doing all of a sudden. So the arrows once again show, like if I'm on this note here and the change comes, I'm going to want to go down. This note is not in my scale at the moment. When it changes, I might go. Then note might sound a little awkward or tense as soon as the chord hits, but it is right, and you seal the deal by going into the new pattern. It sounds like, wow, you really know what you're doing. But while I'm in the gray, I'm going to be thinking that my end yellow notes here, I'm going to be ready to move those up as soon as the chord changes. I'm sorry. Now, I'm on there in the purple zone, and I'm on this note right here with the little star in it. Why I put that star? I should have put that star here too, because really the only way, one of these notes, if you notice, for every key change going from one direction to the other, only 2 of the notes are good to move a half step from. One of them you should only bounce to, you're only going to be able to bounce to the same note in the scale. So from here, I was just following those rules to make it audible. Here we go. The final deal, and I guess I didn't make, well, it's good that I didn't make another sheet because I should have had another sheet. Where the hell is it? Did I delete it when I went and hit delete? That would be kind of weird if I did. Let me look for something here because that certainly is strange. I'll be dipped. To quote, oh man, that sucks. Is it even on sheet 1? Damn. All right. Well, here's what we're going to do. You could also, I'm just going to do it here then. That really sucks. I lost the whole sheet then. Oh, there it is. I didn't lose it. Oh my God. Okay, here we go. Is there one more? No, that's it. Okay. All right. So here are the next 2 scales. Now we have the same C, F, G. However, it is flipped because that's how it works on this part of the fretboard. Let me show you here. And it's a little bit of a different concept. However, we are playing what we referred to earlier as the Phrygian shape. However, we're using that. That's our C minor, gray for C minor. I'm sorry, C major. We're just using this in the proper position so that, what is it, right here, we find our square. Where's our root for C major? Well, we find our square, and that note will be on the C note of the fretboard. So up here, the 15th fret of the A string is C. So here I'm on this C note. If the transition was coming up, I would think about taking that up, and I would be playing this once again. The Aeolian shape now is what we're using. They're just basically reversed. We're using the Phrygian shape for C and the Aeolian shape for A flat. And once again, you have two notes that will slide good. One note you want to use, one of the link notes you want to take caution. Just stay on it and don't move during the transition. But now I'm on it again, but I'm going back down to the grayscale, and you can see if I'm in purple and I'm conceptualizing my move, I know that that one is going to move down a half step. I'm on a gray note. Gray, yellow, 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 gray. So if the note changed, I would stay there. From here, I'm on the C now. When the chord changes, I'm going to go. Now, if I'm on the G in the purple, I'm going to stay on the G in the transition. Now I'm on the G in the gray, so I'm going to go up one. I'm going to use the C. I tried that walk down approach. I was on the purple note before the C. And you can give it a jazzy kind of chromatic walk down. Let's try that from here. All right, so you kind of, let's put it on the fretboard. So here you can see, once again, you can use the same concept of using the three notes from basically this same string grouping again. I guess I was mistaken earlier, where once again, if we conceptualize EA, DG, and BE, group, group, and group, we've got CFG, CFG, CFG. It occurs at each end of the fretboard, but it kind of takes you off the fretboard. So I just conceptualized this movement here, and I use the other one that was back here. Where was it? Here for this, for the other shape, for the first one we went over to avoid a bunch of explanations, doubling up on things. So as you can see here, we're in the middle. We've got a diagonal row of CFG, CFG, and CFG. And you could use just this simple shape. And you could be down here on the fretboard. You could be down here on the fretboard. So, oops, sorry. That'd be C major. yellow, purple. Getting ready to transition. Transition. I just was looking at when I was in purple, I'm looking here and thinking about my transition movements, possibilities, going down from this note, going down from that note, wherever I kind of end up when I'm noodling. And there's our scale shape over the top to show you the whole kit and caboodle there. But you could either, consider this a structure, or you can just place these over each of these. Same exact thing, get you even a greater pool of notes across the fretboard. And that's what I'm going to leave you with today. That is the flip-flop without having to really know about that. Very interesting stuff. However, I like to keep it focused on the fretboard because that's where the music's coming from, and I don't have the mental capacity to do much else because I'm just a bong brain like that. So I want to thank you guys for watching so long. I think this one had reason to go on for 3 hours or whatever I did, maybe 2. And yeah, I think that it was probably worth it because this is a really cool concept. And let me end up with them chords again just to exit this lesson, and I'll shut it off while I'm jamming. I screwed that up. Just pentatonics. other thing, I did want to mention as I get myself back on camera here is that, well, I guess I don't need to be, but we'll wave goodbye with my awesomeness here. Here I am. Poof, I'm back. At the another thing, one other thing that was awesome that Noel did, and we'll give him his final credit here, Noel Johnston. I'm sure you will check the link below if you didn't already previously watch his lesson before this, so you understand everything we're talking about. He played this really cool thing that had this Alan Holdsworth sound to it, and he did that when he was just playing the CFG part. Anyways, that was really cool. What do we got here? We got a C. There's the F. What do we got here? Ooh, something's horribly out of intonation there. We have a note from the Aeolian scale, so that would work over the and then when you transition to the grayscale, you can do things like that. You got this stretch here, that was kind of an Alan Holdsworth sort of trademark thing. Now, just mentioning Alan Holdsworth is I'm a little trepidatious to do that. I don't even think that's a word, but what I mean is you would barely be scratching the surface compared to what that guy knew about his music that he created and the way he visualized and conceptualized music in the fretboard. Barely would be scratching the surface. It's almost embarrassing to say Alan Holdsworth. However, I do know that he tended to use the giant hand he had to double up notes between strings, which created some of that unusual sounds. That's it. We got to get running. I'm sure you guys do too. Hopefully, at the very least, you guys are always welcome to fast forward through this lessons or break it up and watch it over a couple days. That's cool too. But it does help the algorithm if you can watch it all the way through. But I know I could just go on forever. So like, subscribe, and throw a comment in there. Say what you thought was cool. If I missed anything that Noel said, if you still have some questions over what I showed versus what he showed, leave a comment and tell me if you liked it. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Catch you on the next one. We'll do another of somebody's lessons coming up. Probably his name is Zabel or Zabel. Mike Zabel, or is it Mark Zabel? I got to check it out. But he's another great guy. Just love to comment on one of his videos. I'm really taken aback by that. It's about what I show in about 3 hours. So that's how great we got to go over some of these guys. some of his concepts. So thank you for watching. I'm going to hit stop, and you guys have a great day because you're awesome. Thank you.